Trade Center. And let me also say this: it's hard to fly a plane through a city at 600 miles an hour and hit something as narrow as the World Trade Center. It's actually pretty difficult. So I mean, the fact that let me just say, I don't think there has to be something outside of human interaction there. There's got to be some sort of remote control flying capability being used in that whole instance. And they achieved their objective. I mean, not soon after that, the Patriot Act comes along. They get to go into Afghanistan and expand their the imperialistic reach of the United States, and we've seen nothing more than the government taking our rights away and people standing by and letting it happen in the name of safety. You know, and are we really that much safer, Mel, you think?
Of course not. It is a joke. And, you know, to put things in perspective, I know somebody who's a high-ranking executive of one of the airlines involved in 9/11. Mm-hmm. And there are two topics you do not discuss in that airline. One is what crashed in the Pentagon, and two, chemtrails. So what are they hiding?
Wow. Did you hear that, Griff?
Yes, Mel, I wanted to ask you, the aircraft that the passenger plane that went down in Pennsylvania during that event, I tried for some time to identify bodies found on that plane, and there were none. I could never find any reference to any dead bodies on the ground in that wreckage. Also, I wanted
there weren't
to
any dead bodies in the Pentagon or there either. And
That's
what
right.
I've been told about the Pennsylvania alleged crash is that there was an open mine pit that they had covered, and they had opened it at that time, and it had been closed for a few weeks before the accident, and they reopened it that day. That's what I've heard.
That's interesting.
Now,
that's very interesting.
What is your feeling about making an issue of searching people while the very pilots and the very planes in question are spraying the people? That is the single greatest treasonous act that I have ever seen on the earth, that government would do that and then lie to the people, and the pilots are saying they don't know anything about it.
Well, I got to tell you, Griff, you were the one who really started opening my eyes about chemtrails. You and I did a show on 9/11 of last year, and I just did a show with Michael Murphy, the co-producer of the film What in the World Are They Spraying? And I have to tell you, I've learned a lot of new things. I know you refer to the Navy and Wright Pat and all that, but I started looking into the effects of aluminum. We all know that the incidence of Alzheimer's has
skyrocketed.
The roof.
Yes, skyrocketed.
Barium, which is something that makes your immune system go down. It blocks your T cell production. And then strontium. Somebody on the chat room asked me what it does. It's a radioactive isotope that gives you cancer, gives you anemia, and it damages your bone marrow. So when you add those three things together, Michael Murphy went to Hawaii. He interviewed a community, people that wanted to live self-sufficient off the grid, and they showed the amount of alkalinity, which to us as human beings is good, but the amount of alkalinity in their water is messing with their soil, their crops, their palm trees are dying. And also I looked into this. Monsanto is coming up with a super seed that's resistant to aluminum. So it really makes you wonder if part of the chemtrail program, or Operation Cloverleaf, as you call it, is so that we cannot be self-sufficient, so that we cannot grow our own food. We can even talk about Codex Alimentarius. So everything is interconnected. Pharmaceuticals, food-producing companies like Monsanto. Makes you wonder. They're dumbing the population down. You drive around in your city, you look around you, and people are zombified. They seem to be in a daze. And you look up in the sky, and the correlation is you're being sprayed.
Yeah.
And now even in commercials, you see the sky full of chemtrails. So the kids that grow up watching that thing, it's a normal thing in our skies. Even my little 3-year-old daughter the other day said, "Daddy, what is that? Why is that plane scratching the sky?" So even kids are noticing.
Yeah, my kids notice the same thing too, Mel.
How can the pilots not know it?
Right.
Well, that's just
How
it.
can they not know
think
it?
about think about it, Griff. I mean, these guys have to circle the airports, and if you ever take a look at like a map of all the planes that are in the air at any given time, they got to pass each other. They've got to see something. You know what I mean? It blows my mind that there isn't more talk about it. But of course, much like everything, much like the fear that's cast in citizens of this country to speak out or to do things to resist, I think the same is kind of true of these pilots, for fear that they may lose their job or something else. But what they don't understand is if they just banded together and do this, they ain't going to lose their job. There's only so many pilots. They can fly so many planes. You know what I mean? What are you going to do? You're going to ground the whole fleet? Yeah.
Well, Michael Murphy interviewed a few pilots who talked about it, and the common denominator, none of them allowed their faces or voice to come out publicly. So obviously some of them know about it, but they know they may lose their job. Or just like when a pilot says they saw a UFO, they keep it quiet because they don't want anybody to find out. Because if you hear a pilot from, say, United, I saw a UFO, tomorrow you'll have people saying, I don't want to fly United. I don't want to fly with crazy people that say they saw a UFO. Yeah. Same thing with chemtrails. And as you say, you see that all the time. But in addition to pilots, how about meteorologists that you watch on TV on a daily basis? Those people see, and they know what a cloud is, a cloud formation. They know the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail. The contrail dissipates, effervescence, and disappears. The chemtrail stays there for hours.
And Griff, we interviewed, just so you know, Mel, we had a meteorologist on about a month ago, and it just so happened to be a guy in my area, the Hampton Roads area of Virginia, that got fired for his job from his job. He was 21 years there for religious beliefs, and we breached the subject with him because we thought, well, what the heck, man? He's a meteorologist. He's got to have seen this stuff before, and total denial, absolute denial that this happens. I was driving my parents from the airport about a year ago, and I was trying to explain the concept, and I look up in the air and I said, see that plane going across there with that big stripe going across the sky? That's a chemtrail. And no sooner did I say that they shut it off. And I said, now wait just a what happened? What happened there? I said, it was spraying, and now it's not. So what more do you need to see or need to hear to understand that? And there's some great resources, folks. You're aware of Cliff Carnicom, right, Mel?
Of course.
Right. I mean, if anybody's got a database about chemtrails and everything else, I mean, you talk about a good resource, carnicom.com, folks. Go there and check it out because, that is quite an extensive resource for chemtrail information. And, I mean, we're not just limited to metals. That's the problem. At any given time, folks, we want to talk about false flag events. Think about this. Every day we wake up, we go to work, kids go off to school, we do our everyday things, and we see these planes fly overhead. What's to say one day they don't drop off some sort of superbug and just spray that in the air? Then what? We're totally exposed when it comes to that. So, and yes, I see in the chat room, yes, I'm from North Carolina. I'm right over the border, and the major cities that I'm close to is like Norfolk, Hampton Roads, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, right there. But I am in North Carolina. And so Mel, I mean, think about it. What a perfect setup that is for something like that.
We remember the hoaxed swine flu that we had last year. If people say, no, we don't want to be vaccinated, what a great way to inoculate the whole population by spreading, these pathogens over us all the time. Mm-hmm. But Michael Murphy went to a few geoengineering conferences where they were actually saying that we needed to start deploying aluminum and aerosol to reduce the global warming, because according to them it's man-made, and we all know it's a hoax. Mars and other planets are experiencing the same warming that we are here. Right. That's a different story. But they were saying that it was not in place yet, when we know it's in place. But in my opinion, and I'm giving you my opinion now, in addition to geoengineering, that may be actually a ruse. That may be to divert us. I think it's bioengineering. As Cliff said, there's Morgellons disease, there's Alzheimer's, there's a bunch of cancers, all these metals, all these chemicals, all these biological things that are being spread all over us. And people don't say anything. Griff, you went to a laboratory in Phoenix where you showed the amount of all these chemicals in our water, in our air. What did the EPA say? No, there's nothing wrong.
I've had meetings in their offices, EPA, and on a state level, and they will not acknowledge it, and they will not address the problem. They'll talk around it. I did get one supervisor at the EPA to slip one sentence, and we knew that they knew about it, and they were covering it up. One high official told me off the record that they were ordered not to look at it. They could look at everything else, but they could look at ozone levels, but they could not look at aerosol spraying.
So take it a step further. Michael Murphy went to the go ahead. Sorry.
Just one other comment. One thing we're noticing, a little side effect, in addition to affecting the food crops and the ground and the soil and all of that, it's causing acid reflux in a lot of people across the country. Acid reflux. The fix for that is to drink some Bragg's apple cider vinegar, B-R-A-G-G. A spoonful of Bragg's apple cider vinegar will eliminate acid reflux, and I think acid reflux has to do with the atmosphere. Go ahead.
Griff, I had never suffered from acid reflux in my life. For the first time earlier this year, I started suffering from that. And you're right. Every day I take my apple cider, and it went away. So it's making your body more acid, and the apple cider makes it alkaline.
You have to maintain an alkaline body, alkaline water, anything to continuously drive the body alkaline. If you let it go acid, most of the foods that we eat drive it acid, and the atmosphere will drive it acid. So it can set off any number of diseases. Cancers breed in acid. Disease generally breeds in acid. So it behooves everyone to drive your body alkaline.
And I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice, but I can tell you that you're born alkaline and by design, and then you become acidic by all the food that you eat. So absolutely, you need to become alkaline. In an alkaline body, no disease can grow. Cancers cannot grow in an alkaline body. But just going back to chemtrails, Michael Murphy went to Washington, and he tried to interview a number of congressmen, representatives, and senators. And every time he used the word geoengineering, he would get the cold shoulder. So it's almost as if they have lobbyists or somebody behind the scenes saying you do not touch that subject.
They're afraid of it, Mel.
Well, why do you think that, Griff? Do you think that they're under scrutiny? Would you say?
No, they'd kill them. They'd kill the people that actively started looking at that, just like they did Admiral Jeremiah Borda, Chief of Naval Operations. He did not want to go forward with that program, so they killed him in his house, Jeremiah Borda. And then they said he committed suicide because he was wearing a medal on his uniform that he wasn't authorized to wear, so he shot himself.
Right.
That and then the program went forward after that.
I remember when I was in the Navy when that happened, and we were all like, wow, that's just insane. I mean, I met the guy, and he just never came off to be that way.
No, he was an enlisted man in the Navy as a young guy, and he went all the way to the top, Chief of Naval Operations.
And he had the control. Program.
He had the control, yay or nay on that, so they took him out. I can tell you, since getting involved in these things about 11 years ago, I can give you a list of people that have been murdered for one reason or another, opposing government, looking at secret programs and so on. It just makes you want to throw up, looking at government and the treason.
Another example, Griff, Dennis Kucinich tried looking into this, and he wanted to pass a bill to forbid geoengineering. All of a sudden, 2 of his relatives were murdered or died, killed, unknown, mysterious circumstances. Now, whenever anybody wants to talk to him about chemtrails, he will not return any phone calls.
It was put in his bill, and it went forward. He was called aside and told to get it out of there or else. So he retracted and took